This has become a common sight in Sicily. Hundreds of refugees and migrants taking a first step into Europe after being rescued in the Mediterranean. But charities warn that a larger proportion of them are unaccompanied minors.
The number of people displaced by conflict worldwide stands at 65 million, according to a new World Bank report. The study, produced together with the UN Refugee Agency, said 10 conflicts are responsible for the majority of forced displacement of people. The 65 million figure is equivalent to the population of the United Kingdom.
In the villages of Yemen, it's the children who suffer most. Wherever you go, you can see the human cost of this war. Yemen has always been desperately poor, but the war has made things worse. It's not just the villages that are struggling. This war has forced 600 hospitals to close down, and lack of supplies has pushed this central hospital to the brink. The hospital is overwhelmed with children, but in some cases, malnutrition has turned into outright starvation. Poverty has always affected Yemen, but now there's a risk of losing an entire generation.
Thousands of protesters have marched through Brussels to demonstrate against 2 planned free trade deals. The European Union is set to finalise a trade pact with Canada, and it's holding ongoing talks with the United States over a similar deal.
At least a dozen police officers and several demonstrators have been hurt in violent protests following the fatal shooting of a black man in North Carolina. The unrest began late on Tuesday after Keith Lamont Scott was killed by a black officer after being mistaken for a wanted man. Despite that, police insist he posed an imminent deadly threat and had a gun. That version strongly differs from the 43-year-old's family, who claim he was disabled and didn't have a firearm. Amid an intense debate in the US over the use of deadly force and racial bias among law enforcement officers, Scott's shooting came only a day after police in Oklahoma also admitted killing an unarmed black man on Friday. Hillary Clinton described the video as unbearable.
That man went to the car, hands up, put his hand on the car. I mean, to me, it looked like he did everything you're supposed to do. And this young officer, I don't know what she was thinking. I don't know what she was thinking. But I'm very, very troubled by that. I'm very, very troubled by that. And we have to be very careful.
Disturbing video showing an officer hit in the head with a brick. Looters setting fires and storming stores, all after police shot and killed a man that they say aimed a gun at them.
Well, rioters shutting down traffic on Interstate 85, looting cars and trucks and setting things on fire. Right now, police are standing guard outside of a Walmart, you can see there, surrounded by shattered glass after looters take over the store. And this incredible video showing rioters jumping on top of a police cruiser, other cop cars kicked and destroyed with large rocks. Officers dressed in riot gear trying to control the crowds by standing in lines. But as the night escalated, they were forced to deploy tear gas. At least 12 officers are hurt, including that one that we showed you earlier, who was hit in the face with a brick. A reporter also hurt in that chaos. The protest breaking out hours after police shot and killed 43-year-old Keith Scott. Officers were looking for another man when they saw Scott get out of his car holding a gun. Police say he was a threat, but Scott's sister claims he is disabled and was just waiting for his son to come home from school.
Foreign ministers, including Russia's Sergei Lavrov and the US's John Kerry, met at the UN General Assembly to discuss how to extend a fragile truce in Syria. But just hours after the meeting, the Obama administration accused Russia of responsibility for Monday's airstrike on a UN aid convoy, which shattered the peace agreement.
The U.S. expressed outrage at an attack on a convoy carrying humanitarian supplies. The White House said all information indicates an airstrike hit the convoy.
We hold the Russian government responsible for airstrikes in this space, given that their commitment under the cessation of hostilities was to certainly ground air operations in places where humanitarian assistance is flowing.
Russia has reacted to the accusations with fury. The Russian Foreign Ministry has expressed indignation and anger at attacks by protectors of terrorists and bandits to blame Russia or Syria for the attack. Moscow has released drone footage showing damage to the UN humanitarian convoy did not appear to come from an airstrike. The video shows a pickup truck with an attached mortar gun belonging to the militants was with the convoy.
As I was talking in the Security Council, sharing our analysis and frustration over the situation of Syria, Ambassador Power chose to talk to you. First thing she said, she was not interested in what I had to say, because what I was saying is a stunt. Actually, in all my years in the United Nations, that is over 10 years, and in all my years in international life, I've never seen, which is over 40 years, I've never seen such an extraordinary display of American heavy-handedness as we're witnessing today.
After a US-led coalition airstrike killed over 60 Syrian soldiers in the northeastern Syrian city of Deir al-Zor, both ambassadors to the UN pointed to each other. But how can any ceasefire succeed if the two sides can't keep their own promises?
The government could come down to a fight over national security. As we brought you on Special Report last night, a new Inspector General report in the Department of Homeland Security showed that more than 800 immigrants facing deportation were mistakenly granted citizenship. Now, as correspondent Doug McElroy reports, some conservatives are trying to use the power of the purse to get Congress to act to stop potential terrorists from getting in.
With Zika funding and a 9/11 lawsuit bill still unresolved, Republicans are gun-shy about including another add-on that would suspend the refugee program because they've taken blame for government shutdowns in the past, and Democrats are more than willing to try again.
Security has been tightened around the UN headquarters amid the gathering of world leaders. Terror attacks in New York and New Jersey had marred the lead up to the meetings. 1,000 more uniformed personnel have been added to an already heavy security force, and they have been deployed in Midtown Manhattan and areas near the UN.
A military community is outraged this morning after seeing this shocking photo of a teacher stomping on a flag in the classroom. Lee Francis, the teacher, asked his students for a lighter or scissors to destroy the flag. He says it was all a part of a lesson on the First Amendment.
George Soros admitting to the whole world that he's dropping $500 million to back these refugees and these migrants. You might as well call them militants, because they're not women and kids like your mainstream tried to make you believe. These are well-groomed, brand new clothes, food, cigarettes, the whole nine, young men storming into these countries.
California, that there is a U-2 from the Beale Air Force Base that has gone down in Sutter, California, and 2 pilots apparently have ejected, and that's all we're hearing right now. We heard that it is a surveillance plane of sorts, a spy plane, if you will, and that 2 pilots have ejected. So that's what we know. We'll get you more information as it comes into the newsroom.
Hundreds of dead fish are washing up on shore in Longboat Key, and it appears red tide is to blame. Reports of dead fish washing ashore started coming into our newsroom late yesterday. Residents sending in photos of dozens of fish along the shore. There are fish along Gulf of Mexico Drive down to the north end of the Key. FWC was called in yesterday to take samples of the water and some fish. People who live nearby are now dealing with the foul smell.
They are now stating that over 75% of 60,000 water samples that have been gathered between 2013 and 2015 contain levels of chromium-6 above the legal healthy limit set by this government. And they're saying that This is when it goes into the area where it can cause cancer. And they're saying that the state with the highest amount of this chromium-6 in its water is Phoenix, with almost 400 times the amount that they have set as legally healthy.
World leaders are trying to tackle drug-resistant superbugs. Several, in fact, are meeting today at the United Nations to discuss the health crisis. U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Sylvia Matthews-Burwell will address the group. Meanwhile, a new report says that deaths due to antibiotic resistance could increase globally from 700,000 to some 10 million per year by 2050.
It's a real problem, a real issue. The money's needed for vaccines because that's one of the best ways we know to stop it. The money is needed so that we can move money to states like Florida, who are having challenges with mosquitoes that are actually spreading the virus. And third, the money's needed for the research. So we understand, is it causing only microcephaly or is it causing other neurological damage? We're optimistic, cautiously, that the Congress will get this done before it leaves.
At least 19 people have been killed after flash floods and landslides tore through a western region of Java Island in Indonesia. Garut district in West Java was the hardest hit area after two rivers overflowed following torrential rains on Tuesday night. So far, at least 16 bodies have been recovered. 8 people are still missing. And authorities have rescued nearly 1,000 villagers and brought them to army barracks and other evacuation centers. The local government has dispatched search and rescue teams to assist people affected by the floods.
Overnight, a mystery odor making people sick in Northern California. The city of Vallejo, that's northeast of San Francisco, is now warning its residents to shelter in place after getting hundreds of calls about the smell. At this hour, officials don't know where it's coming from, but they say they have not found any traces of natural gas in the area. People there are being told to keep their windows shut and their air conditioners turned off.